Hi, my name's Amanda, and I'm going to be doing my Educational Giants paper on Horace Mann. Horace Mann was born on May 4th, 1796 in Franklin, Massachusetts. Horace's father was a farmer, and so it meant that they just really did not have any money. They were kind of really poor. They were just scraping by. And the surprising thing is that even though Horace didn't go to elementary school for very long, they just couldn't afford it. He was actually able to get into Brown University and graduate from there. Brown was first married to a woman named Charlotte Messer, and she was the daughter of the president at the time for Brown University, but sadly 2 years later, she passed away suddenly, and it's said that Horace never got over her death fully. But Horace Mann later married a woman named Mary Tyler Peabody, and they eventually had 3 sons together. It was while studying at Brown University that Mann truly became interested in education and politics. And Mann graduated from Brown in just 3 years, and then he went to the Litchfield Law School to become a lawyer. Mann was able to become a lawyer in Massachusetts, and from then he went on to be a member of the Massachusetts House of Representatives, and then also was in the Senate for a couple of years. It was when Mann was a member of the Senate that the Massachusetts school and education just really started to decline. And so because all of this was going on, and with the school systems failing, a huge education reform was happening, and it created the first Board of Education throughout the United States, and Mann was the secretary of it. Even though Horace Mann had a love of learning all growing up, he was never able to be in a position to really help schools and the education and what was taught in the schools until he became the secretary for the Board of Education for Massachusetts. Because the Board of Education really didn't have that much money, they were just starting out. They really wanted to find someone that had a lot of good morals and someone that wasn't just out for the money or out to gain as much money as possible. They really wanted someone who was invested in the school system. And because Mann grew up in poverty, he was able to really understand what it meant to be committed to education and how much it would eventually mean to students to have an education reform and figure out what they really needed to learn. Horace Mann was so passionate about school and the common school education that in 1838 Mann founded and edited a journal called the Common School Journal. Within this journal, it became very successful, but it was also very controversial because of his 6 principles of education. The 6 principles are: 1, citizens cannot maintain both ignorance and freedom. 2, this education should be paid for, controlled, and maintained by the public. 3, this education should be provided in schools that embrace children from varying backgrounds. 4, this education must be non-sectarian. 5, this education must be taught using tenets of a free society. And 6, this education must be provided by well-trained professional teachers. That was kind of a different thing, having well-trained professional teachers, just because there weren't really any schools that had teacher education that someone could graduate in being a teacher. Because his principles were so straightforward and what he thought should happen in a school, and who should be teaching in those schools, many people were angered by Mann's different principles, but luckily Mann's principles were able to prevail, and they're gratefully still being used in the school systems today. Although Mann wasn't the first to propose teaching training-based institutes, through his controversial 6 principles, he was able to make it happen. From his little time that he did go to school when he was younger, Mann knew that the standard and quality for teaching had to be raised, especially in rural areas, which is where he was from. Mann also suggested that women should become the new teachers, and he was adamant about them being let into the new common schools because people didn't want women to teach, but he was very adamant about it, and thankfully he was able to get that passed. After Mann made all of these changes to the education system, he realized that he had one more change that he had to make. Back in the 1800s, schools and education were closely related to and had a pretty obvious religious intent. By the time that Mann began reforming the education, it became clear to him that education should not solely have religion as a major subject. While Mann affirmed that our public schools are not theological seminaries and that they were debarred by law from inculcating the peculiar and distinctive doctrines of any one religion, denomination amongst us, or all that is essential to religion or to salvation, he assured those who objected in the secular nature that our system earnestly inculcates all Christian morals. So he pretty much told everyone that although he wanted to have the religious aspect taken away from it, he still wanted to have those same Christian morals that everyone really cared about. And while there were many people that were distressed by this news, Mann also reassured them that there would be holy books within the schools that children could learn and read from. Later, after Horace Mann felt like he had done enough to help reform education, he became a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and he served proudly from 1848 to 1853. After he finished with the House, Mann later became the president of Antioch College. Before Horace died, he gave a commencement speech and said this to the graduates: "I beseech you to treasure up in your hearts these my parting words. Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." To me, Horace Mann is the epitome of what an educational giant is. From a young age, Horace knew how amazing and important education was. He didn't stop until he made a difference for those who couldn't receive an education, and then even after his educational reign, he didn't stop trying to improve the world by taking a seat on the U.S. House and then also becoming president of a college. Thank goodness we have had Horace Mann on the earth at one time to help us truly understand and love education and becoming teachers.